All this talk about KP lights, I have to tell you that Tim's asked me to do one next month in St Leonard's, and I just want to reassure you and tell you I've written it already. So, yeah, hello. It's really nice and intimate tonight, and I've had a couple of pints, so yeah. So on that, I'm not sure it's sticking to protocol, but if you want to shout out anything and ask during the talk, I would kind of welcome that, really. What am I going to talk tonight about? I'm going to talk about an idea called the Cobra effect. Probably not something that many of you have heard of. Has anyone heard of the Cobra effect? Okay. And in the context of passions, I suppose I kind of realised that probably about 8 years ago that I was really passionate about ideas, and we'll talk more about how that developed a bit later on. What was the trigger point? I don't know if any of you know about these books. They look awful. They're in airport lounges. That book's called This Will Make You Smarter. It's kind of awful packaging, but it's a guy called Neil Brockman, and he runs a website called The Edge. And what he tends to do is have an annual question. The question which this book is about is called "What scientific concept would be a good thing to have in your cognitive toolkit?" Kind of like that idea of cognitive toolkit. I've been a teacher and a school leader for over 30 years, and I've really increasingly become really disappointed in the curriculum offer that schools are involved in delivering. And I think if there's any time in history when we need everyone, particularly young people, to have the ability to think in a really pragmatic and sustainable and effective way, it's now. Probably haven't got time to tell you more about that, but I think, just in terms of the issue of democracy, if we look at the Brexit vote, the referendum, and we look at Trump being the president of the US, we can kind of, well, I hope you follow me on this, that we see that democracy is in demise, in crisis, and I think we need to be more discerning in a world that's getting much more complex, really much more complex. Old binaries are breaking down. We mentioned Trump. Trump at one turn is decrying fake news, then next minute is producing it. And it's really complex and contradictory, and there are loads of other examples like that. So I also should tell you that for the last 10 years, up until a year ago, I was teaching theory of knowledge as part of the International Baccalaureate, and that's like epistemology 101 and philosophy 101. And it had no content, it was about critical thinking, but there was no real content. And I started to find ideas that I thought were like content. They were like irrefutable. They were like facts, but not, William the Conqueror came here in 1066. They were like, this is an idea. And I remember years and years ago going to a stand-up show and seeing a guy who had real pronounced cerebral palsy, and he came onto the stage quite awkwardly with some crutches. And then when he got to the mic, he threw the crutches on the floor and said, "Look at them, useless without me." So I started to aggregate. I've got about 25 to 30 ideas that kind of, they work in a double fashion. They work to hold you up and give you a position in relation to the complex world and the ever increasingly complicated world, but also they're useless without being put into practice. So how does, I've got 25, 30 of them, don't ask me to list them all because I just go blank, but I'll give you a few examples. And indeed tonight I'm going to do an insight into three of the ideas I've aggregated, then talk about the Cobra effect. So how did I actually sift through ideas and decide what I'm going to include? I should say I'm partway through a book on this at the moment. So it has to be useful, like I said, you have to be able to use it in practice. Transdisciplinary. I think one of the things that education is going wrong in is the fact that we organise knowledge and understanding by discipline. And hopefully this will come out a bit later on how stupid that is. Uncontested and neutral. And some of you might think, well, no, all ideas are value-laden. But as far as I can do, I've tried to just include ideas that no one can refute. No one can say, no, that's not a thing, that serves somebody's purpose, that's partial. And also they really matter. Knowing about them, they really matter, they're pragmatic, they, kind of lives depend on them, and I'll show you why later on. Epiphanous, I just put that in because it's such a beautiful word. when I first heard about the Cobra effect, it was like a light bulb moment. It really was for me. And because they're epiphanous, I might be completely wrong here, you have to tell me if I'm wrong, but they're unforgettable. you can't forget the Cobber effect when you hear about what it is. So the three ones I'm going to talk about, just so you get a grasp on where I'm going with this, is SYNAC, which stands for correlation is not a cause. And the second one is nature culture. Basically, some people tell you things and say they're natural when in fact they're cultural. And other people will tell you that some things are cultural when in fact they're natural. And just that question, like going around with that tool in your head where is this natural, is this cultural, is quite important. And path dependence, I'll tell you a bit more about that before we get to it. Okay, so there's this great guy called Tyler Vergin. Tim, can you tell me when I get to my limit as well, because I'm not got the clock.
Yep.
Okay. So Tyler Vergin has a great website. Anyone heard of Tyler Vergin?
No.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so he's got a website called Spurious Correlations, and what he does is he trawls through loads of different disparate databases and looks for correlations. And he found this one, which is really interesting. That you can see the very close lines on that line graph, and there is a real correlation between the amount of cheese that people eat in the US and the deaths, fatalities as a result of getting tangled in bed sheets. Which I think is really funny. And it could lead to you to think that if we could decrease the amount of cheese eaten per head in the US, we might be able to save some lives here. There's another one where there's an almost perfect inverse correlation between the number of honey-producing beehives in the US and street arrests for marijuana. So if we just put money and subsidise increasing the number of honey-producing beehives in the US, then problem solved. Has anyone read?
Surely there's a connection between eating cheese and having bad dreams.
Yeah.
And if you're having bad dreams, you might get something.
Oh, yeah.
Depends when you eat
That's a
cheese.
good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But the question is, with this, is the extent to which the correlation is causal. And I think, given the fact that I hope we agree that the world's getting ever complicated, the idea of sussing out causal chains is a real skill that we need to nail. George Monbiot writes for The Guardian, and I was talking to a friend today who's just on a cycle ride in Somerset. And do you remember, was it 6 years ago, the Somerset levels? There was floods, and everyone was running around talking about the water authority to blame, it's the Tory government, it's whatever. George Monbiot said it's to do with rampant meat eating. And basically what he said, I'm not going to say, because I don't think there's ever one cause, because we live in a world which has discovered chaos theory and stuff. But George Monbiot said that governments subsidise the production of maize, which is the principal ingredient of meal that we make for animal livestock. Maize has a very short root structure, so when the rain happened that year, there was a lot of runoff into the rivers, and that caused the floods. And I think this notion of cause and causal relationships versus just correlation is really important. You've probably read, some of you would have read Freakonomics, and Dubner and Levitt, quite well known this. They said that there was a real crime decrease in New York in, I think it was the early 90s, and everyone was running around going, it's Mayor Giuliani, it's changing gun law, it's this, that. And they said, no, it was the fact that abortion became legal 15, 16 years before. And so it's great, it's a rich theme, I can't afford to rant on about that too much. Another idea is, this is Barbara Kruger, a piece of her artwork. She was a commercial artist, she became a fine artist, and she called this, well, we won't play nature, she called culture, the difference between culture and nature. I said that before, didn't I, about people, that the idea of some people saying that this is natural, this is cultural. And so that's another idea. Okay, moving on to the path dependence. Very last one, another example of an idea that I'm including in the project, and path dependence is this QWERTY keyboard, which was designed to slow typists down. Because what happened with typewriters was, you do remember typewriters, there were these hammers around the median age here. Remember the hammers, and if you type too fast, those hammers get jammed. You remember them jamming? Some of you will. And yet we still use the QWERTY keyboard.
Yeah, but when you type on an electronic keyboard,
Yeah.
they're in the same place, and you mess up the same, because they don't get stuck, you just get the words looking weird.
But the hammers don't exist anymore.
No.
And
you still get.
You're pressing two keys
Yeah.
at the same time. And
So
then
you get-
it gives you a wrong letter or one.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
But I think obviously if you press two keys at the same time on a typewriter, you will get jamming hammers. But I think the theory here is that even if you make it so easy that people can really type very, very fast, then the hammers will still get jammed at times. But of course, people learn to to type fast anyway. And I think this is contested, actually. This is more an illustration of the idea of path dependence. Path dependence is actually the idea that we still persist in behaving in certain ways, and we have institutions and we have ways of leading countries and what have you that are based on circumstances which have long since disappeared. I hate to mention Michael Gove, this will be the first two times I mentioned tonight, but on a recent discussion around the structure of school terms, he talked about a half-term holiday in October. He's from Aberdeen, by the way, so it doesn't sound like it, but he's from up north. And he referred to the half-term holiday as being called the tatty holiday in Scotland, and that's because it was there so that people could go and help pick potatoes. Of course, kids don't do that anymore, but we still have the holiday. The holiday still might be a good solution to current circumstances, but the circumstances have disappeared. That's path dependence. So the Cobra effect, what's the Cobra effect? The Cobra effect comes from the time when we ruled India, the Raj, and there was a governor in Delhi who was so alarmed at the number of cobra snake bites that he put a reward out for every dead cobra that was brought to him in his office. And it went well at first, and then some locals decided that it would be a good idea to start cobra farms. And started to sort of farm the cobras, go in and then take a whole load in and get the reward, all that rupees. And then when this governor found out about that, he stopped the reward. So what happened was that all the cobra farmers let their snakes go. And what happened was the incidence of snake bites went through the roof. And so the Cobra effect is when you try and do something and have a desired outcome, it actually has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
And recently, I've been unable to find this actually, but I remember about 4 or 5 years ago reading there was an international agreement to subsidise the safe release of CFCs. Because obviously CFCs damage the ozone layer. And the same thing happened. People started to produce CFCs, particularly in Southeast Asia and South Asia, to attract the subsidy. And then when the subsidy was stopped because they found out that they were doing that, they just let the CFCs go. So the same thing happened. And similarly, in 2003, Barbara Streisand was really alarmed that this photograph on the left was posted on a website called Pictopia.com. She sued Kenneth Adelman, who was the guy that ran the website, because she was worried about sort of like frenzied fans stalking her and what have you. She thought it was an invasion into her privacy. Before the very public court case, about 6 people viewed and downloaded the image, and most of those were solicitors. Sadly, after the court case, 240,000 people. So the Streisand effect is a subset of the Cobra effect, and it's to do with information. You know, if you try and lock down information, sometimes the opposite from the desired outcome can happen. Some other examples, a couple in China, but nothing intended really here. In the 19th century, paleontologists went to China and they decided to, co-opt the local labour, and they offered some money for each fossil fragment that was submitted. And so what happened after a short while is that people were finding these wonderful examples, fully formed fossils, and then smashing them into bits so that they could get the same rupee, or not rupee, yuan, RMB, probably not then, reward. And in doing so, to attract the reward, they just destroyed a lot of very valuable fossils. And then later on, the Great Leap Forward now decided in 1958 that the whole of China needed to be mobilised to kill mosquitoes, flies, rats, and the Eurasian tree sparrow. The Eurasian tree sparrow was seen as a pest because it ate seeds of the rice harvest and the rice itself. And so you can see here, the middle picture is amazing. I can't imagine how he did it, but apparently everyone was just chasing them until some of the birds actually dropped out of the sky with exhaustion. But the Eurasian tree sparrow was literally driven to almost extinction. But we live in a complex world. What they didn't take into account the fact that it was true that the sparrow did actually eat the seeds of the rice harvest one, but it also at the larval stage of lots of other insects that also predated on the crops. And if you know anything about the Great Leap Forward, you know that it resulted in a famine that killed over 20 million people in China. It's almost inconceivable, isn't it? But one of the contributing factors was this, which again had the opposite outcomes of what was intended. I'm going to leave that example. Okay, another example, just to rattle through some. There's a guy called Yuri Nisi, who's the chair of behavioural economics at University of California, and he ran a study in Israel. People were alarmed about the fact that people who use daycares for children, like kindergartens, were often late to pick their kids up, and so he suggested and ran a small sort of experiment with 10-day centres, daycare centres, where if anyone was late, they, half an hour up to half an hour, that's paid the equivalent of $10 as a fine. And what they found in those daycare centres was that the lateness went up, it doubled, because people, they kind of felt, rather than have an awkward conversation with people that have been looking after their kids and had actually, tolerated their sort of like infrequent lateness, they felt like it was a service. They began to feel like it was a service. And so you can see that sometimes the culprit in many of these cases is money. Money can complicate the issue. But another example of the Cobber effect. So, how can we apply the Cobber effect to things that are happening now? I think we can all agree that and it's become right into the headlines recently, hasn't it? It's been a bit of a bugbear of mine for many, many years. Is single-use plastics like water bottles. Could we be approaching this and creating yet another example of the Cobber effect? This is just last year, October. Second time I mentioned Michael Gove, I do apologise. It's amazing when you do a search on images of Michael Gove, you get something. Anyway, so the reward and return scheme. I would like to say that this is an example of the Cobber effect, because I think if it needs recycling, it probably shouldn't be produced in the first place. If you reward people, then you basically let people off the hook. You can go and you can buy these plastic bottles, and you can sleep at night because you're giving them back, someone getting sort of 10p back or however much it is. But those single-use plastic items are still in the biosphere, and they shouldn't be. It seems insane to me. I lived in Hong Kong for a long time, and this is a screenshot from an app that a friend of mine developed in Hong Kong, where you can it'll just use GPS to show you where you can refill your water bottle. But it seems to me to be insane that there are, ATMs, since I've been back in the UK, there's ATMs everywhere. So imagine the situation where it's part of a little mini heat wave we had about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. You're walking down the road, you've got no money, but you're really, really thirsty, you need to hydrate. You have to go to an ATM, but that's easy because they're like rats, so you're never more than like 10 metres away from an ATM. You get some money, you go and buy a single-use plastic, but Michael Gove comes to the rescue, get a reward on it, someone's going to take care of it, and it'll go away, it's not my problem. And basically we should stop, I think, this is my opinion actually, we should stop producing them. And let's get rid of some ATMs and put water fountains in instead. There's a great scheme in Brighton, and I've heard this is coming to Hastings as well. It's been sort of like perpetuated by the Peace Centre in Brighton, which I think is called OPEC now, which stands for something else, can't remember. And basically they go around and they ask retail outlets, cafes to have this sticker in their door so that when you're out you can just go in and get your water bottle refilled. Which is great, because another issue around awkward conversations, you don't want to go in somewhere which doesn't have this sticker and say, do you mind refilling this? If you don't know they're already willing to do so. But, this makes sense to me.
Yeah, but you've already got another bottle to fill.
Yeah, how inconvenient.
Bottle for life.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a single-use plastic bottle. People always, when I take it to terms, they go, no, I use this again, I use it again. Get a steel one, or whatever. You can get a permanent one, yeah. Well, you can ask me, tell me if you agree with that later, but this is another example as well. Smithy Wood, this is a photograph of Smithy Wood just outside Sheffield, and Owen Patterson, the Environment Secretary, has got a great new idea which is called biodiversity offsetting. Absolutely wonderful idea. Okay, so Smithy Wood is 800 years old. It was sort of kind of at least 800-900 years old, and obviously the ecosystem that exists there has developed very slowly over that time. Beautiful old trees. A company wants to level it and build a motorway service station there. There's a lot of protests in process at the moment, and but this idea of biodiversity offsetting is really great, because what the developers have said and what the Tory policy increasingly is condoning is that we level this and it will severely, I mean the plans will just cut this wood in half, leave a little section here, a little tiny section over there, a tiny section here. All inside biodiversity will go. It's called Smithy Wood because the steel industry started there basically. Monks from Kirkland Abbey, which is nearby, would smelt charcoal there and make the first sort of iron products way back in the day. But biodiversity offsetting means that the company that wants to develop the motorway service station can buy some land somewhere else, plant loads of little saplings in rows, the same number of trees that are here, and so that's fine. It's really good. It's fine. So again, biodiversity offsetting, which I think purports to limit environmental damage, in my mind, is having the opposite effect. It legitimises environmental damage and the demise of ancient woodland. And I love this website. Go on.
One thing it will destroy is the mycelium. It's not interconnecting the roots of all the trees, which is how they communicate with all sorts of ionic exchanges. But it also gives them a coherence for surviving in a particular environment.
So
The mycelium is how mushrooms propagate.
it's like that ecosystem thing which we just grow really gradually over the year, like evolution over the years. Yeah, I love this website. Sadly, it doesn't exist anymore. It's called cheatneutral.com. I love this. I think it's now a vaping website. The domain has been passed on. Absolutely fantastic. So this, in one foul swoop, just shows you how ridiculous biodiversity offsetting is, and shows you that carbon trading and what have you, and cap and trade is another example of the Cobra effect in my mind. Cheatneutral.com. What does it do? If you sign on, you can. If you want to be unfaithful to your partner, you can do it because you can pay someone else somewhere else in the country to be faithful to theirs. It's an absolutely wonderful website. If any of you are thinking of being unfaithful, I'm sorry to again repeat that the website doesn't exist anymore. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Some other more personal examples of the Cobra effect. I worked in an international school in Hong Kong for some years, and we had a really close reciprocal relationship with a very rural, very poor community in southern China, in Guangdong province, and we go up there a couple of times a year. And one day, a particularly rich parent, and to be honest with you, a lot of the parents in the international school were quite rich, just gave us a consignment of about 200 pairs of shoes, and my colleague, who was received the donation, was really ecstatic to be able to, at the idea of taking it up to Baiwan, this small village in Guangdong province. And of course, what he didn't foresee is, and this is kind of what this is all about, it's unintended consequences, that as soon as he went up there and distributed these shoes, he immediately put the local cobbler out of business. And he was mortified when he came back. And similarly, I was involved in lots of service learning trips when I was working at this school. This is photographs I took in Vietnam. These very rich, privileged kids went into Vietnam and built paths in a remote village, and you can't help thinking that they were actually putting people out of work. They were doing free labour. They were undercutting people that were very poor, and who could have easily done the same work. And it didn't sit very well with me actually. But I think that's another example of the Cobra effect. And a bigger issue, which is very, very similar, is voluntourism. You know, you all know, I'm assuming you know about voluntourism, and lots of people from Europe get to maybe to a certain age and they think, well, I shouldn't go on holiday, I feel a bit guilty, I'm going to go on holiday and I'm going to give back. And so in Cambodia, when certain really cynical people in Cambodia heard about the voluntourism dollar, is that they started orphanages. So what they do is they go into rural areas and they find desperately poor families and assure the parents that they would take the kids away and look after them, and they'd be well educated, and in some really desperate situations the parents would give their children to these people coming in, who the kids would be taken back, and to attract the maximum amount of dollar they would malnourish the kids, they would dress them in rags, and people come in from America, from Europe, and help and volunteer. And so, in terms of volunteerism, tourism, you have to be very careful about what you set out to do and see whether you're not actually propagating and increasing the very problem that you want to assuage. And that's me. I should just say one last thing, is that I think, to paraphrase a great educationist and thinker from America, who sadly is gone now, called Neil Postman, he said, be very careful with every new idea or very new strategy or piece of technology, because don't just ask what it does, ask what it undoes. Thank you. Brilliant.
I know people were asking questions throughout, which is brilliant, but does anybody have any other questions for yes, they were absolutely right. No.
Okay, so you've done us all the gloom and doom, which is great, thank you.
Okay.
What are your solutions to this?
Okay, brilliant. What a great question. It leads me on to say something that I forgot to say in the talk. Well, basically, the solution, there is no panaceas. I mean, I think the thing that the complexity theory tells us is that you can't have very simple panacea ideas to deal with problems which have emerged through a whole set of concurrent causal chains. It just doesn't work.
So you're just telling me the same stuff. Because you put a hell of a lot of thought into what you've just told us, so you must, with your intellect, have worked out a solution.
Well, I mean, the baseline for me is that I think I've kind of got this idea that everyone, perhaps before they leave high school, should know about the Cochran effect and the whole rule of unintended consequences, and probably some other stuff about complexity theory.
But again, that takes us to where we are now. That doesn't give us any solutions.
Well, I think it's education, isn't it? That's part of it. If we change our approach to education, then we could perhaps start to find.
There's an awful lot of us that have gone through education, and all of us, presumably, in this room are well past that.
Yeah.
And
well, I think
we can do solutions too, can't we?
We've all done QWERTY education.
Yeah. Well, I think, just very quickly to rattle through some ideas. Obviously, I think education needs a complete overhaul. But again, to answer your question, it's a bit like asking me to try and get eggs out of omelettes. To retrieve eggs back out of omelettes. You just can't do it. You wouldn't do it in one simple idea. But education needs overhauling. I think I intimated earlier. I think democracy is completely great in theory. It doesn't work at the moment. We need people that get a chance to really be active in the democratic process from the age of 13 onwards. So we need communities to be alive with democracy, because at the moment politics is being done to us rather than working from the grassroots up. And I think demise of communities got a lot to do with that. So we need to inject into making communities much more lively and involved in a real sort of local democratic process. I just think, this idea as well of, in terms of politics again, is that the governments change every 4 years. You can't get us out of the mess we're in now with things chopping and changing every 4 years. I mean, go over as the Secretary for Education, all about education. the leader of education in this country, it just makes no sense at all. If you ask my opinion, I think sortism is a good idea. There's one that's been tried before, sortism. Government by jury. In other words, you just have a jury which is turned over partially over years, so there's continuity, and it's from every walk of life. So you get called for jury, you get called to govern the country. So it becomes participatory. So you're very huge. It sounds ridiculous. I can see people responding.
It sounds incredibly scary.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's true democracy. And again, if the education's in place.
And yes, David.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the idea of knowledge. Are you saying that an idea of truth emerges only in base communities that are truly connected with where they are, and that you can't talk about truth emerging from some sort of great scientific Olympus that can tell us what we need to do?
Well, I think another way forward, and this is another chapter in the book, is that there's no such thing as binary. And I think what you've position there is it about this or is it about this? It's a bit about both, isn't it? We'd always read books from people that are long dead and still get truth, but I think you make your own truth pragmatically through experience. You have to experience things to really know them. And this is again to go back to the democratic process. Politics is up there. It's almost abstract. It's not connected to the 18, 19-year-old person who can't get on the housing ladder, can't get a job apart from the food and beverages, and we need that connection to be real, I think. But the idea of truth, well, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I think truth to a certain extent is relative, but that's another chapter in the book.
Any last questions? Yes, quick.
Natural and cultural. That's kind of done my head in a little bit.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Well, gender roles, for instance. Are they natural or are they cultural? This whole idea of men being rational, women being irrational. I'm just paraphrasing.
We're sure that's true.
Let's stop that. Let's look at the notion. Just look at the idea of,
Sorry.
the idea of monogamy. The idea of monogamy, for instance. And some people would say that maybe 30,000 years ago, when we started to cultivate land and own livestock, only then did it become important to be able to identify your own progeny, because you had to pass the land on to your kids. And so then monogamy became a necessity, if you like, at the very inception of capitalism. But some people think monogamy is natural. Some people think that homosexuality is natural. Some people think it's cultural, and even worse, a disease. So it's just that question: is it natural or is it cultural? Is a really important question.
Historically cultural or historically natural, something that came into the psyche of the human race 10,000 years ago and now is seen as natural, but at the time it could have been a cultural effect.
Yeah.
So the two merge into each other in my
Absolutely.
mind.
But that's the whole idea of this project, is that you'd be able to really think about it, and I think it's really, really true. People say about plastic being unnatural, but to me, anything that's produced in the biosphere has to be natural, doesn't it? You look at the computer in front of you, you think, it's so sort of plastic and manufactured, it's still natural, it's still been made within a finite biosphere.
Yeah.
But it's just the thinking that goes with it, and asking the question, am I behaving in a way because this is the natural way to behave? I was talking about before about reading this, what's his name? Grayson Perry book called The Descent of Man, and he talks about the idea of the default man, and the idea of the default man, he argues, is so embedded, so sort of commonplace, so commonsensical that everyone thinks it's natural. And the default man being the white, middle class, predominantly middle class.
Do things become natural over a period of time? Where's it, would a defining point be? Because ultimately, what is natural?
Yeah, exactly.
Where does it start and stop?
Yeah. But
you don't need to answer that.
Yeah, but it's not, but the fact that you're thinking like that is the way I want people, I think people should be thinking the whole time. Exactly, there aren't no wrong answers.
I'll take one more question, and then I'm going to say that if there are any questions, there's been lots of questions throughout, so if there are no more questions, then I'm going to stop it there. Fantastic. Can we thank Gareth for...